Welcome, everyone, to today's podcast on Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. In this episode, we'll dive into Chapter 2 of the novel. It's a pivotal chapter for understanding the family dynamics and introduces us to several key characters, which will play significant roles throughout the story.
That's right. We're starting to see more of the interaction between Mr. Bennet, Mrs. Bennet, and their daughters. This chapter is filled with wit, humor, and a touch of social commentary. So let's break it down, starting with the opening scene.
We begin with Mr. Bennet's visit to Mr. Bingley, a wealthy gentleman who has recently moved into the nearby Netherfield estate. Mr. Bennet visits Mr. Bingley to make his acquaintance, although we quickly see that his actions are more about appeasing his wife than any real desire to form a genuine connection.
Exactly. Mr. Bennet's visit to Mr. Bingley is an interesting moment because it showcases his playful and somewhat sarcastic nature. He initially tells Mrs. Bennet that he plans to visit Mr. Bingley, but it's not until after the visit is paid that Mrs. Bennet knows about it. Mr. Bennet is always keeping his wife on her toes, isn't he?
Absolutely. Mr. Bennet's character is clever and dry, and he doesn't take much seriously except perhaps when it comes to his daughters. In this chapter, we see him exchange dialogue with his second daughter, Elizabeth, or Lizzie as she is affectionately called, who has a quick wit that matches your father's.
Yes, and Elizabeth's quick thinking contrasts sharply with Mrs. Bennet's rather anxious and often nonsensical approach to everything. For instance, when Mrs. Bennet is focused on meeting Mr. Bingley and arranging a proper introduction, Elizabeth reminds her that they will likely meet him at the assemblies. But Mrs. Bennet, in her usual dramatic style, dismisses her, showing her more anxious and superficial side.
Right, and that brings us to a key aspect of Mrs. Bennet's character, her fixation on marriage. She's obsessed with the idea of marrying off her daughters, especially in light of the family's financial situation. Her nerves and hysteria come to the forefront as she desperately hopes to secure favorable marriages for her daughters.
You can see this in her reaction when she learns about Mr. Bennet's visit to Mr. Bingley. She doesn't appreciate the quiet, calculated approach of her husband and instead insists on rushing to make connections. It's clear that she sees marriage as the ultimate goal, and any delay feels like a personal failure.
It's interesting how Austen uses Mrs. Bennet's character to provide a lens through which we see the social pressures of the time. Women were often judged by their marital status, and Mrs. Bennet is hyper-aware of that. On the other hand, Mr. Bennet's indifference and lightheartedness create an interesting dynamic within their marriage. He seems to take life in stride and is perhaps more interested in having his daughters marry for love or compatibility, as opposed to merely securing their futures.
Definitely. Now, let's talk about the younger Bennet daughters. Kitty and Lydia get some attention in this chapter. Kitty seems to be a bit of a follower. She mimics her sister Lydia's behavior, especially when it comes to coughing for attention. It's a small moment, but it highlights their naivety and the way they rely on each other to navigate the world.
Yes, and Elizabeth's character, despite being the youngest, is already showing a bit of her boldness and playfulness. We also see this in her conversation about Mr. Bingley dancing with her at the next ball. She's confident, maybe too much so, and doesn't shy away from asserting her expectations about the future.
In fact, Lydia's behavior makes us think about the role of women in the social world of Pride and Prejudice. They are expected to be young, attractive, and, of course, well-married. The pressure placed on these girls is immense, and Austen uses the daughters to explore different responses to this societal expectation.
That's a great point. Finally, let's look at the closing moments of the chapter. Mr. Bennet, tired of the constant bickering and scheming around him, retreats, leaving Mrs. Bennet to hold the fort with the girls. This chapter ends with Mrs. Bennet making excuses for his husband's behavior. And once again, we see the complexity of their marriage. Mrs. Bennet needs his approval, but Mr. Bennet appears to be completely uninterested in playing the game.
And isn't it interesting that Mrs. Bennet quickly tries to justify her husband's actions to the girls? She immediately declares how wonderful he is, even though we know he's really just humoring her. Austen's sharp wit is on full display here, and we see how the family's dynamics are already setting the stage for the complex relationships that will evolve over the course of the novel.
Absolutely. So, to summarize, this chapter is filled with humor, character contrasts, and subtle critiques of social expectations. It's an excellent way for Austen to introduce us to the Bennet family's dynamics and their different approaches to life and marriage. And we get a sense of the comedy that will unfold as we move forward in the novel.
That's right. So, students reading this for their English class, keep an eye on these characters. Each one is symbolic of different societal pressures, whether it's Mr. Bennet's detachment, Mrs. Bennet's desperation, or the girls' varying approaches to their futures.
Exactly. Well, that wraps up our review of Chapter 2. Stay tuned for more episodes where we'll continue analyzing the characters and themes that make Pride and Prejudice such an enduring classic. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Until next time, keep reading and remember, a good book is always worth a second look.